Let's talk about one of my favorite people at the moment, Pope Francis. He is making news again this week. The Vatican released his apostolic exhortation. It's an 84-page document that essentially lays out his platform for his papacy. And he's been making headlines for his calls to the rich to share their wealth with the poor and takes to task the global economic system. So this is just first of all, let's break this down, Paul. This is a mammoth document here. I think it's how many? It's words. It's 52,000 words or something.
Yeah, it's a very long piece. It's 85 pages. At least is the. I actually read it from the Vatican website. And
did you read every page?
I did not read every page, but but it's a very. That's the thing I wanted to say is that it's a very dense, very theological. It's called The Joy of the Gospel, and it's so what it is. We took out a lot of big headlines. And it is amazing the kind of critique that he's making of our financial system. No one else is talking like that, with that kind of forthrightness.
No other pope beforehand?
Well, there have been popes that have critiqued the inequality of wealth. That's true. But I'm just saying, in the world stage today, you don't hear that kind of critique. I mean, it's really remarkable. But what it is, it's important to remember that for him, it's all encased in a faithful context, where it's him within his wider vision of the gospel. It's about a personal gospel, but it's also about a social gospel, what we are together, what they are as a church. And it's a very beautiful moment. I mean, there's one phrase which I just love. I want to be a dirty, hurt, bruised church rather than a comfortable church. Let's be in the streets rather than tucked away in our security. It's a very powerful statement.
And it sort of echoes what he's been doing since he really came into the papacy, and kind of has this, I guess, more open approach, more human approach. But Billy, I want to come to you about this. Some people have been saying, he's this progressive line. He wants to be more inclusive and also wants to repair a lot of what was, before him, namely the scandal that was plaguing the Catholic Church for years and years, which was the sex abuse scandals, of course. What do you say to that? What do you say is this as a kind of like a panacea for the hurts of the Catholic Church in the last, couple of decades?
Yeah, I think that this is who he is. Everything we've seen him do is very genuine. This is how he's always been. You read stories about him before he was the Pope, and he was very frugal. He was a very caring person. I think this is who he is. And, a lot of people would say it's just the right guy at the right time. The church has been in a difficult spot. We have a rise in the nuns, the people who aren't associated with any faith. And so I think that, there was obviously some strategy there probably in selecting him. But the belief is that if you're Catholic, that he was selected based on what God wanted for the church. So I think it's good person for the right time. But, also I think people on both sides try to politicize the Pope. Oh, he's a liberal, he's a conservative. I think the interesting thing about this document was that it really sets out parameters that address the financial systems, obviously, but also individuals. There was a really good line in there about him calling politicians out and saying that, why don't politicians go and ask God whether their plans are a good idea. So, as Paul said, all of this is encased in faith. So it's very hard to politicize that. I think this is somebody who marches to the beat of his own drum, and he stands for what he believes is right.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the questions I have, though, is that he was talking a lot about the economy, and we mentioned at the beginning this sort of like rich poor, that the rich should be more thoughtful and more giving to the poor, and that the inequality divide should really be shrunk. This is a piece in The Guardian. Pope Francis understands economics better than most politicians. Heidi Moore is writing here that he is, as Paul was saying, one of the most globally prominent figures in a long time to say this. How much influence is he actually going to have over economics? I mean, I know that he was going to decentralize a lot of the powers from the Vatican and sort of, hand it back to bishops, for example. And you could sort of say with Vatican finances, maybe he's redistributing some of that wealth over there. But in terms of the IMF, for instance, or World Bank, I mean, what are the Pope's kind of comments going to do to directly influence policy, if anything?
Well, he has been meeting with a lot of those groups and holding up a mirror and saying, hey, you should be thinking about this. And he can do it in a forthright way, in a really matter-of-fact way. I mean, he even met with the Olympic Committee and said, hey, stop commercializing and trading in the lives of athletes that you're just basically sucking money from. I mean, that's
really cool.
That's like, it's just holding up a mirror, and then people have to decide. I mean, we have to decide. But it's also about what the effect it has on Catholics who are are voting, what effect it has on Catholics who are involved in somehow are already in power. I think that there is an influence. Of course, the Vatican can't change the world economy on its own, but the Vatican can have influence. You don't really want the Pope to name you and say, you're part of the problem. That's a real power that he's exercising, and I think we should be thankful for it. I felt like this was another one of those moments where this Pope really showed us who he was, but also more showed us what the world might be. And that's what we need in this season right now. And I also should just remind you, the Catholic Church was in a place of complete despair. Before the conclave. It was on a downward spiral. And I have to say, just the opposite is happening now. And we're seeing a lot of enthusiasm.
No, absolutely. And, the commoners seem to agree. Here's one from John Bryans Fontaine, who says, the Pope is the man. So there you go. He's the man, if nothing else.